Hello, and welcome back to the Onward Shift Podcast. Today we have an interesting guest with us. He has come on the show all the way from USA. Brett, how you doing today?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
I can't complain. I'm excited to have you on the show, and yeah, I want to really deep dive into your injury and where you are today, because I know we met at the B1M event in London, and you nearly broke my hand when you shook it. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh, felt that after. But I was absolutely gobsmacked to find out that you was right-handed, now you're left, and that was through a injury. So I'd love to know more about that story and how you manage. It
It
wasn't.
was something that happened when I was only 18 years old, and I was at a vehicle crash, a single vehicle, my own, obviously, and by myself. But by way of this accident, I had a wooden fence post go through my shoulder. And so that obviously resulted in me having lost use of my right arm and hand, which to some degree over all these years now, I've regained to some degree, but will always be without. In the meantime, to your point, became left-handed. So that's where the story begins, kind of touching on a lot. I'm sure we will, but the course of my life took a drastic change at that point. The trajectory then looked entirely different, but it was this accident, not necessarily a fluke thing, but something that truly could have happened to many of us, and happened to me, like I said, at only 18 years old.
So what Like, how did it happen? Like, was it an actual collision?
So I fell asleep. So asleep at the wheel, right? And it was early morning hours after the previous day having been a long one. Um, out with a bunch of friends and doing what guys will do at that age. And got sleep, as would be expected of any of us at that age, not much of it, but in our minds enough. And then I was on my way to work early in the morning and fell asleep at the wheel. So the vehicle veered off the highway, hit a roadside lamp or light. And when the truck made impact, all the glass from the cab of the truck shattered. Vehicle continued on beyond that point, went through a barbed wire fence. And when it went through that fence, as the wire came against the front of the truck, it pulled the post out of the ground and essentially sent it my way like a slingshot and just sort of harpooned me. And
Gosh.
that was the accident.
And what was you doing, like, work-wise? What was brought up to at the age of 18?
Yeah, at the age of 18, this is where it's kind of ironic, given where I am today. We all, meaning myself, my buddies, our girlfriends, everybody in town, small town Oklahoma is where I'm from at that point. We all worked at McDonald's.
No
So we were
way.
all working fast food, slinging burgers, right? And so nothing at all in line with what I'm doing today. But at 18, going to college, that's what we were up to, right?
So you were basically partied, got into this accident, and after the accident, I'm assuming you was rushed into hospital. And what
Yeah.
happens what happens there? What happens, like, are you told, you've lost, well, all feeling
Yeah.
in your arm, or what happens there?
Yeah. So I was resuscitated. I was brought back to life essentially two times
Oh,
alongside Interstate 40 running through Oklahoma and was life flighted. So by helicopter taken to Tulsa, Oklahoma, the nearest big city. Where then, yeah, I was in ICU for 5 days and in the hospital another few days after that. Told that effectively I likely would never have use of my right arm. I was told I would likely have brain damage. I was told I would likely be blind in my left eye. I was told I may not walk the same because I had broken my left leg also in the meantime. So it was all very dark and tragic. I weighed just under 200 pounds the day of the accident. And 8 days later, coming out of the hospital, I weighed 151 pounds. So I lost nearly 50 pounds in the course of only a few days, effectively overnight, by way of the accident.
That's absolutely crazy. And what are you thinking at this stage? Like, your whole life has just literally flipped upside down. Like, what does an
Yeah, yeah.
18-year-old kid do at this stage?
Yeah, so that's kind of the interesting part even to me this to this day, but tell it in simple terms, I was okay, you know? Somehow likely shock, I don't know, right? But I was okay. It wasn't good, right? It was all very sad and the unknowns were insurmountable, right? But somehow I was okay and that I wasn't depressed and wasn't going through any of that. You know, all my friends and everyone had come to my aid. Everyone rallied around me. Um, and very short amount of time, within only a couple weeks or so after having gotten out of the hospital, I was back at work.
What?
I
Are
was
you
a mess.
serious? Oh my
I was a
God.
mess. But back to work, and then within less than, well, just over 30 days time, I went to New Orleans where I had surgery. At the time, there were only two places in North America capable of doing the surgery that I needed. One in Toronto, a surgeon in Toronto, and a surgeon in New Orleans. So I went to New Orleans, given proximity to where I was, and they did what they could. You know, they took a nerve out of the back, a superficial nerve out of the back of each leg. So I've got a scar from my ankle to the back of my knee, both legs, and then a scar here to here where the nerves taken were cut up into small pieces and used to splice together this network of nerves in my shoulder. And so I was scarred. I was stapled from ankle to knee, both legs, neck to the inside of my arm here, skin graft, right? Just all the things being done. All that I come out of the hospital in New Orleans, my arm as big as my leg, the swelling following the surgery, which was a 12-hour surgery, all said and done. But I could see, I could walk, was supposed to have been in a wheelchair, followed by having used a walker of sorts, crutches, then a cane. That was the prescription. I did none of that. I walked on my leg from day one, young, dumb, stubborn, and I don't think I've paid for it much. But that's how I got through everything as quickly as possible, accelerated. You know, there's a long story to follow all of that, but it was in about 3 years' time I had met what they considered to be kind of best case scenario and what they had laid out to be a 5-year track. So I beat best case by about 2 years. And while that was good, the bad news was at just 3 years in, that was probably going to be as good as it gets.
Okay.
But I've over the years since then gained strength and I've figured out how to do everything one handed more or less. And of course, now in the day and age we live in where we celebrate rightfully so men and women who have come out of combat because there have been wars fought since the time I got hurt. Men and women who come out of combat and they are much worse off than I ever was, and they do things that are remarkable. You
Absolutely.
know, I've learned through a lot of hard way going about it. You know, it all could have been worse, right? And
Yeah.
I've got it pretty good.
God, you're
And that
so
story in between
positive.
is a lot of what makes me who I am today.
Wow. That's some positivity right there. But there's a question I've got to take you back to that 18-year-old kid. What's your mental health like at that stage? Like, I know in hindsight, you're probably like, I've done the best I could. But if you take yourself back to that 18-year-old kid, what was your mental health like?
Yeah, so that's where the story begins, right?
Wow.
And it really, you know, to this day is something that I struggle with, and that's what makes it interesting. So I'm 18 years old. I was hurt in June of what then was 1996, and I turned 19 only a couple of months later, August. And so, just to sort of tell the story in simple terms, but long story short, fast forward to the time I'm 21, resolved to settle into a plan I've developed in my own mind and have begun to put it into action, making plans to very quietly take my own life at 21 years old. So at 18, it happens. I'm nearly 19 at that point. And within right at 2 years' time, or just under, I'm prepared to take my own life. So the depression has set in. I think a lot of that is what we today would categorize as PTSD. But at the time, that really wasn't a thing, right? That we at least talked about in open terms or as we do today. I'm sure it was certainly a thing clinically and in a number of ways, but today we talk about it, quite normally as a common thing. So it was never brought up to me at the time, nor was I seeking help, right? Again, I'm still very stubborn, proud, and too proud to really talk to anybody about it. I'm just dealing with it. And my way of dealing with it is through addiction at that point, and just through this plan I've made up to take my own life and spare myself. And ultimately, the reason I didn't do it, I had a friend finally, one person, call me out on it, ask me what's going on. And by that point, I'm ready to talk, although I'm not willing without this kind of, I guess, encouragement. And so
Yeah.
I tell her what I'm planning to do as though it's nothing. Right. And, she says, in other words, the hell you are, and I needed to hear it because I said to her, and I said it for the first time out loud, yeah, I'm not going to do that. And I thought all the time about what things would, the same things anyone else would think of. How's my family going to feel? Right. It's going to break my grandmother's heart. Right. My dad, my brother, my family, and then my friends too. But it took somebody just calling me out on my own bullshit. Right. If you'll allow me that. But then, that's where it gets even harder.
Sorry,
It's one
Brett,
thing to,
can I I'm gonna have to
yeah,
ask some
please.
questions here because at the age of 18, you've had this traumatic accident. By the age of 19, you was going through, I guess, a great place. You've had your surgery. You found out that you're going to have your eyesight. A lot of the stuff that you were not going to have, you've still got. What happens from 19 to 21? Like, I get depression kicks in, but was it the fact that you couldn't use your right hand? Is it because you couldn't do the things you're normally doing just before the accident? What actually happened there?
Yeah. So I think, right.
Yeah.
In my mind today, looking back on it, I think really what happened was at 19 to 20, really, I'm good. I'm happy. I'm thriving. I'm back in school, right? Never missed a beat. And so I'm back in school. I'm doing well. I'm making new friends as I would otherwise or naturally being in college. And I wasn't at that point in time drinking anymore. I wasn't doing anything else. And so I was on the straight and narrow. I was a good kid, you know? I don't know at that point, Vish, to be honest with you, there was nothing that really turned the tide, but for the fact that I was sort of reintroduced to the idea of sort of dabbling again and some of those things I had done before, seemingly at the time prior to harmlessly, certainly a wild way of living, but not necessarily contradictory to the way a lot of folks might have been at the time. When I was reintroduced into those things, drinking and drugs, it took on a dark complexion that I hadn't known before. And so, being that I think pent up within me was this sort of trauma and maybe what we would today classify as PTSD, I began sort of reliving things that I hadn't really had come to mind. My mother passed when I was only 11 years old. She was only 35 years old, and she died from having essentially drunk herself to death, alcoholism, and to the point that it cost her life. Rather than looking at that as a cautionary tale at this point, I almost am emboldened by it. And I almost am saying to myself, if I can beat this, then I can also live that life somehow better than, right? And won't affect me the way it did her. And it got ugly. That addiction took hold of me very firmly, right? And it got deep and it led to a very dark place to where then I just couldn't manage, right? I was too far, too deep, and the only answer was to end it.
Gosh. And then this
It makes no
friend,
it makes no sense. I just know I thought a lot about my mom during that time, and rather than looking at her and having, I guess, pity for her and seeing in her the things she should not have done, and maybe looking at the ways she, as a parent, wasn't there for us, let us down. I instead almost sympathized and empathized with her to a point that I wanted to take on that persona and convince myself I could do it better. So
you're
it's
so
bent.
young. Yeah. Well, you're so young, and it sounds like you've never really had the opportunity to process all of these emotions, and the alcohol and the drugs, I guess, lowered your I don't know, your emotional sensitivity, and now you're feeling it all, and it's all just hit you really hard, and you're so young, you're still developing as a young adult, and it just got too much. Wow, your friend has now reached out to you, and she's kind of given you a kick up the arse and gone, "Sort yourself out." What happens then? Like, have you got a recovery journey, or does it go good and then bad again? Like, where does Brett go from here?
Yeah, yeah. So it kind of remains ugly, you know,
Okay,
and that's kind of to me one of the more interesting parts of it all. That's the chapter that in hindsight is really interesting. So kind of the biggest punch in the gut at that point was what now, right? Where do you go from having been okay with taking your own life and ending it to I'm not going to do that, but I've sort of flushed away everything on account of having been resolved that this is the thing I'm going to do. So it was almost like, that last ride up to that point so that there were no holds barred, right? At the expense of all things, I'm riding off into the sunset as dark as it would have been. So now what? And I remember asking myself that in that moment, almost out loud, now what? And I didn't have the answer to it. You just go into the next day the same as every other day had been, but you know that you're not going to do that one thing that would have brought it all to a close, right? So how do you salvage it? I didn't have an answer for it. So I sort of just continued down that same path, now without an end in sight. And so it was really the majority of my 20s, an entire decade to follow, that I was in and out of this addiction. Highly functioning, fill in the blank, always working, always excelling. Of course, never getting ahead because I'm working against myself at every turn. I'm married, by the way, by this
okay.
point. This is age 21. I'm willing and ready to take my own life. I meet the girl at the time who would then become the woman I'm married to still to this day, 26 years later.
I was actually, you know
But
what, Brett? I was actually going to ask you that. I hope you married this lady, and I'm so gobsmacked that you actually said you have. That is mad. But
yeah,
like, how does it? How I've got so many questions. How have you gone from, okay, the worst place you can possibly be in life to excelling and progressing in as much as you can, also getting married? How do you hide your addiction, or do you not hide it? It's just uncontrollable. What's going on here?
yeah. So at having just turned 22 years of age, my wife and I are married. I'm not hiding anything. I think I am, right? And I am maybe in the eyes of most, but my wife always knows and doesn't have an answer for it, right? She's never willing, thank God, right? Never willing to give up on me, but always willing to sort of battle me. And we are in love and at odds constantly for 10 years, the first 10 years of our marriage, right? Because I cannot hide it from her. I act as though I am hiding it, knowing I'm not, but I continue to sort of live, rinse and repeat, right? That same lifestyle so that it is truly miserable. And then I'm 29 years old. We've found out that we're going to have our first child, my daughter, who is now 19. And that slows me down. But it slows me down after having been in legal trouble, really going through it at this point, not so that it's cost me a thing, but for a threat of if I don't straighten up, things could get much, much worse. And so I survived that chapter, and our daughter is born, and I'm in and out of this lifestyle, but things have slowed down dramatically. 3.5 years later, we have our second child, my son, who's about to be 16. And really, from about that point on, things are beginning to shape up. I have periods where I go deep down that rabbit hole. By this point in time, by the way, I've done everything from working at McDonald's, as we discussed, at age 16, and for a period of 4 years, the majority of us doing that very same thing, to having been a banker, having been in sales where I did exceptionally well despite all things at the height of addiction. I was a forklift operator. I worked phones. I did anything under the sun. I was a barista and a supervisor at Starbucks, right? I've kind of done it
Wow.
all.
Yeah.
And now by this point, you and I are discussing my second child has been born, my son, and I'm a pipeliner by this point.
Okay.
Having entered into pipeline construction, no business, having been a part of this, I was as green could be.
Yeah.
And it's a age old tale where I knew a guy and
Okay.
he afforded me the invitation to join him. And what for him was a venture as an engineer, having sort of taken on a pipeline inspection outfit by the grace of a couple guys and then a bunch of guys who saw potential in me. They brought me up the hard way. They insisted I learned a lot the hard way,
Okay.
having fallen flat on my face again at every turn.
Have you got any stories you can share about this hard way of being taught?
I don't know. I didn't know anything, you know? I didn't know anything. I had learned a lot, I think, by being highly functioning while at the same time working constantly against myself and still able to succeed, that it brought out in me, I think, the best while sort of keeping hidden away my worst, right? And so I learned how to communicate, right? How to kind of play a part, how to play a character role in whatever this situation might be. So as a pipeline inspector, knowing that I'm against all odds, as green as I could possibly be, working with a bunch of guys who are chiseled, seasoned veterans,
Yeah.
you know, many of them as ornery as can be. I'm playing the part, right? I'm quick to say, I don't know. Teach me, right? Those guys didn't do that. Those guys were always kind of doing the same thing I'm doing, but from an entirely different vantage point. They're not willing to be vulnerable
Hmm.
because they're the veterans and they've got this thing, right? Well, I'm the opposite. I'm not a veteran. I'm a veteran now of a hard-earned life, having been lived the hard way. You wanna teach me things the hard way? Bring it on. Let's do it, right? So I do it and I fall down flat on my face and I fail over and over again. But I think it's just my willingness to pick myself back up and say, look, man, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn. Teach me. I can help you. You teach me, I can help you. My job is to support this operation. And I say that to this day. Now, all these years later, I tell people my job as now global safety director, my job is to support operations. You tell me what that means to you, right?
Mm.
Because I still don't know it all. And
It's
I'm still working hand in hand with guys who have a lifetime of experience above and beyond where I'm at. But that doesn't mean that I can't join them in the trenches and be just as much part of that success, right, as the next guy. And just The empowerment I found in that over the years, it makes everything that at one point in time was a crutch, a strength instead. And I love the opportunity I have day by day to operate within this space of being vulnerable because there's tremendous strength in that because the average guy isn't gonna be willing to honor that. And
Hmm.
so I have that leverage, right?
Absolutely. Well, Brett, I've got to take you back just for a quick second because PTSD isn't something you kind of just get over. It takes therapy, it could take medication, and it takes a long time. So you've managed to land yourself not a job now, but potentially a career in construction. How's your PTSD? And, especially managing two children as well, because we all know children ain't easy. So how's your PTSD? How's your mental health at the stage where you're starting off in construction?
Yeah, so I guess as I'm coming into construction again, it's pipeline, right? It's different to what I'm doing today, but at that point in time, this is 2011.
Okay.
So I'm quite some time removed from when that had happened. I'm what 15 years removed from sort of the beginning of this particular story and this part of my life, and so I'm good. I'm still though in and out of this lifestyle, but it's muted. The interesting thing is, while I'm good and I'm quite healthy and I'm somewhat a version of what I may have once been, I'm now making money for the first time. I'm making what may be deemed real money for the first time. And so when I find my way going back down that rabbit hole, I'm going harder than maybe I had ever gone before. And then I am having to the next day come back into this role where I'm a character actor, right? And I'm having to really rise above it. And I'm learning new skill sets in doing this, but it's also taking a toll that's ugly on many fronts, right? So mental health, how is it? It's not good when it's bad. It's maybe as ugly as it's been and within that snapshot of time, right? Um what makes it better? I give up contract inspection and I moved to Minnesota.
Okay.
So from Oklahoma to Minnesota, I go having hired on as a company hand versus having been a contract inspector for a number of years. And I sort of enter into a world now unfamiliar to me, right? I know pipeline, but I don't know the guys I'm working with. I don't know that sort of infrastructure. And I'm having to figure out for myself this entirely new framework, whether it be my peers, those who will become my friends. How do I sort of live life on the road, which I'm accustomed to, while reporting home, but now with kids who are starting new schools? And it really just kind of brought to a close all of that.
Well,
So, you know, I, I touch on drinking. I touch on having had a life of drug misuse and abuse. Once I moved to Minnesota, that second that second part of the equation, the drug misuse and abuse, it's gone. I've not done that since that time. So that's a chapter that was closed. And so now my mental health does improve, right?
okay.
Um, and the drinking too has been really brought to a close so that there's no longer substance abuse, period.
Is that sort of because you've left the old area and you're kind of like, I'm putting the old Brett behind me, and I want to kind of go forward with this new Brett, or is it just because it wasn't accessible?
So it's still accessible, right? But it wasn't accessible within that sort of world I'd created for myself
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
over all
Okay.
that time. So now, sure, it's accessible, but this is a different world I'm living in. And I don't know that I consciously said to myself, I'm going to change. I think I changed having been given different and new opportunities and an opportunity to take all the things I'd learned, no longer green within this field, no longer green within this industry and truly began to pair that with all the experiences in my life that had made me someone competitively advantaged to play that part, to fulfill that role. And I think it organically began to allow me, perhaps for the first time, to mature while not leaning on drinking and drugs, these things as a crutch or an escape. I was settling into who I am today then without the use of those aids and certainly without the abuse. I don't think it's until probably sometime within the last 6 to 8 years that I really have begun to feel that I've found myself beyond those things, which now you look at my life within the last 6 years, particularly, and perhaps especially so within the last, I don't know, 2 to 3 years, where I've really sort of taken on this role of being a cheerleader for this space of vulnerability. I look at my life then, and I look at my life now, and it's night and day. But I wouldn't be who I am today without all that ugly part of me that constitutes my history.
Course. It sounds like there's lessons that you've learned throughout from the age of 18, well, actually, from the age of 11, which has carried you all the way to where you are today. And I absolutely love something about you, and that's your LinkedIn banner picture says fall 7 times, get up 8. And now that
Yeah,
I've kind of heard your life, I completely get why you've got that there because it makes complete sense. But I wanna move on to what you do now. And
yep,
something that I read about what you've said is you want to deconstruct and revolutionize safety on a global scale. Now, I love that because I'm like, that is ambitious and wow. So could you explain to me, one, that sounds so passionate, but where does that passion come from and what you do now?
yeah. So I think the genesis of that really is this idea of being able to truly be myself within even this space today, right? And knowing where I was, what I've been, who I've been, where I've come from. I talk to guys all day long, every day who got into the trades right out of high school. Maybe they went to college, but they went to college, a lot of them, to be engineers, construction management professionals. A lot of guys joined the union, right, which is true for Minnesota. Not necessarily true for Oklahoma, though. But they've grown up in the trades, or their fathers, their uncles, their brothers. Um, it could be others within their family, all having come from somewhere among the trades. So it's something very ingrained in them. Whereas me, what's ingrained in me, it's not necessarily construction, right?
Hmm.
It's not retail, it's not banking, it's not warehouse operations, it's not manufacturing. I've done all those things. And there have been times where I've been the worst version of myself while not only doing those things, but even excelling in having done those same things or those varied things. The idea of deconstructing and revolutionizing the industry is meeting each and every person you encounter where they are in that moment, right? Because we can't take for granted that we think or we assume guys at construction have always been men of construction, right? Or have always been women looking to make their way in construction, which today women do exceptionally well and historically have, but numbers today greater than what we may have experienced historically.
Absolutely.
I think we're short sighted if we look at that and we just chalk it up for what it is and we move on. Instead, we meet each and every person we encounter where they are in that moment. I'm not the same guy today that I may have been a week ago today, right? I don't know. I don't know as I meet you today what your day has been. So for me, today may have brought about a moment where I found that dark place, whatever it was that triggered it, right? So rather than just looking at you, you're a construction worker, you're a podcast host, and this is what you do and who you are. I just want to meet you where you are. Vish, how are you today? Right. And so we do that. The conversations we have in the field are remarkably different. And so now you're talking to a construction worker. He's an electrician, but he's a guy that's really thinking about his kid who's in college, or his kid who's, just starting middle school or whatever the thing is. And you begin to know people really on a one-on-one basis. You don't have to know them well. I work with someone, a member of my team, who is exceptionally good at hearing your name, about your kids, what it is you're passionate about. She never forgets it.
Mm.
Right. So now she meets you, could be weeks later, by name, asking about your kids. How'd that thing go? I'd like to say I never forget a name, and that's mostly true, but man, I'm going to have to be reminded.
Yeah, you're not the only one.
And all the things you got going on. So she does that exceptionally well, but she doesn't necessarily perhaps excel in areas where I really get engrossed in the nuance of how that person's demeanor and persona interact with this person's demeanor and persona. A little bit I know about him and her. I love operating within that space of nuance and understanding how, as we all sort of together are interconnected and we kind of vibe together, and the work that we do and the way we vibe together and trying to achieve this greater purpose, the delivery of a project, the makeup of who we are as a company. I excel there. And the more that we talk about that and we talk about the nuance of it, and we invite others to sort of engage in this conversation about how we all make up the individual parts and collectively the greater good. Everybody is willing to talk about it, because it's interesting, right? If I'm an electrician for 16 years and or less or more, but I do this day after day after day, day in, day out, I'm really good at my job, right? And I find that guys are keen to teach me what they're doing, why they do it, because that changes the complexion of that day for them, right? It introduces something that to them is interesting, and I think their curiosity piqued by the fact that I'm also curious, right? Well, if I invite them into this world where, hey, you guys are putting the work in place, that's not my role, right? I'm not the electrician. I'm not the welder. I'm not the crane operator. I'm not the iron worker. I'm not the plumber, the mechanic, right? That's their job. My job, I said it earlier, my job is to support them. So the way I choose to support them is to invite them into what I got going on. I want to know how the plumber puts together the pipe that creates now this massive framework, right? And infrastructure we have in place. I want to know how the electrician is capable of doing this work without causing injury to himself or others. That's interesting to me because I didn't go to school for that. I consider myself a bit of a plumber
Hmm.
because I can piece together a pipeline, but
Hmm.
that's not what we do today, right? This is commercial building.
Yeah.
So instead, I express to them my curiosity. And in turn, I invite them to inquire at least a little into what it is I'm doing, my world, looking at things maybe from that 20,000-foot view and bringing together this kind of collective, wholesome thing that I believe is also very much a part of construction and the industry as we know it. Mental health being an incredible part of that.
Well, it's really interesting because I read that one of your favorite words is communication. And just by listening to how passionate you are about bringing people together, how curious you are about actually genuinely caring about how X, Y, and Z is created or building those relationships, you can just hear it in your voice. You're so passionate about it. But Brett, I want to jump onto the mental health side of construction because I'll be honest with you. Um, Obviously, I'm in UK, and the UK mental health in construction is absolute shambles. Health and safety has improved though. Now, I actually did a little bit of research into the USA statistics around health and safety and mental health. So USA has about, well, just over 8 million construction workers, but you guys have got like 167,000 accidents, 1,075 fatalities from slips, trips, and falls. And when it comes to mental health, I believe it was last year, there was 1,000 suicides because of mental health. How is USA tackling these, well, tragic numbers of people?
Yeah, so that I appreciate that question. And that the answer's complicated, I think. I
Absolutely, it
believe
is.
we do a good job as an industry, not just Gardner, my company, and our company, and those that we partner with most closely, but I think as an industry, we are doing a good job, at least relatively speaking, certainly compared to where we've been historically, in talking about it, in raising awareness, in acknowledging those statistics. However, I do not believe we're doing a good job with taking those words and putting them into action. And the reason is it's hard. It's really hard. It's hard to understand how to do it. It's hard to understand what that really means. It's hard to understand how we measure success in doing it. Numbers to a lot of people seem to be arbitrary, right? And that's interesting too. So I stand in front of a room of 200 people and I ask everyone in the room, raise your hand if you or someone you know has been affected by mental health, whether it's mental health struggles and the byproduct of whatever those struggles might be, or certainly worse, suicide. Almost every hand in the room goes up,
Yeah.
right? I ask everyone in the room if they know what to do, if they're in a position to respond to someone dealing with a mental health struggle or responding to someone who may have attempted to take their own life or someone who is considering it. Very few hands in the room go up,
Yeah.
right? Next question is, who in this room wants to be a part of whatever the solution is to this crisis?
Hmm.
Every hand in the room goes up. And yet we really do struggle to understand what that solution is. We're all willing. We all want to be participants in this thing, but across the industry, it's hard to know. So at Gardner, we're doing the things we think might make a difference. And sometimes it's a swing and a miss, right? Sometimes it lands. The idea is if we have it come to mind and we think it's somehow meaningful and can be impactful, we're going for it. So something we're doing, and I believe I spoke to it, for example, at the summit. It's something that since that time we've put into action. We're partnering and are partnered with an organization called Sobrinth here in the United States.
Okay.
And Sobrinth is an organization made up of folks who have been in a position of substance misuse or abuse. Some of them may be clinical experts, some of them not. They're coming to you by way of lived experience.
Okay.
But if I or someone in my family or among our trade partners or among my own team are sober curious or we're truly dealing with an issue, we can call this organization 100% anonymously. I can tell them my name is Superman, right? It's how anonymous it is, and we'll never know it. They will get you the help you need. They'll connect you with resources, whether it's something you want to pursue on your own, or they'll assist you in connecting those dots and getting true help. And the touch points, the times that you can contact them are infinite.
Okay.
Whereas with an EAP, which is where historically we would refer our employees, an employee assistance program, they typically have a cap on how many times you can reach out, right? So we're doing that. And we've already had an incredible response to that program. We don't know who, but we know that there's been an incredible response to it. And we've been able to make it available not only to our employees, but as I mentioned, our families, our trade partners, their families.
Wow.
And it's really this infinite source of help. We also created a peer program. So we call it Peer Champions, right? It's nothing new. You'll find it if you Google it.
Hmm.
But rather than looking at it and thinking that's a good idea, I wonder how we can make it our own. We just sort of said scrap the idea of making it our own. We don't need to reinvent it. Let's just do it.
Hmm.
Right. So I put out my feelers soliciting input from those that might be interested. And at the time, going into our vision meetings in the fall, following the mental health summit, I had a list of about 16 individuals who I thought would likely say yes. Well, that list doubled and is bordering on having tripled since we had our vision meetings
Hmm.
and we said out loud to everybody, hey, we're doing this. And I got texts, I got calls, I got people walking up to me saying, I want to be a peer champion. All that is I'm saying, hey, if you have a problem, whether it's an issue or you're just feeling down or you're kind of going through it that day, I'm here for you. That's all it is. I'm here for you.
So,
Text, call, whatever you want to do.
as a business, right? What do you do? So let's say I came to you, Brett, and I said, mate, I'm having a really rough day. I need half an hour of your time to offload and just get myself together again. As a company, how do you are you like allocated unlimited amount of time to do this, or how do you manage that process? Because if you've got 10 guys coming up to you at different times of the day, that's your whole day gone. You're not doing your day job. But how do you manage that side of things?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Something we've done and frankly, this is us kind of going through it too, right?
Of course, of
I'm not
course.
telling you we got it all nailed down because once upon a time we were doing this thing that we just referenced or referred to as a lunch and learn, right?
Okay.
So we would get like 6 guys, no more than that. Keep it small, but sort of strengthen numbers, right? So we would get 6 guys together, all carpenters or all laborers as a company. I would take them to lunch or we would meet at the end of the day and I would pay for our going to a nice restaurant, sitting down, and we're not talking about fishing. We're not talking about hunting. We're talking about mental health. What's going on? How you doing? What can I do? How are we doing as a company? And it's amazing how these guys open up
Do they actually open up?
without sitting though at that table together, knowing that that's what we're there to do.
Hmm.
You're not hearing the same conversation take place, right? It's something more than banter. It it takes on a tone that isn't comfortable, perhaps at the break table, right? At 9:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
But you get these guys together and you're there for this purpose, and you know that every guy's agreed to be there for this purpose. It's a beautiful thing. Now, fast forward, the idea was those guys that participated in the lunch and learn that I hosted, they were meant to pay it forward, right?
Okay.
So now you guys go, you go or get together with another one of your teammates. You guys go and you host a lunch and learn. I'll pay for it. You just got to be the one doing it, right? That way it becomes organic.
Yeah. So
That happened.
so it kind of becomes culture at this stage.
Cultural, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I get
So
that.
it happened. It happened. There were a couple guys who did it. There were, 1 or 2 superintendents who took the lead and they followed and they did it, but it wasn't nurtured in a way it should have been. We trusted that they would keep that going, but it's easy to say and hard to do, right? So
Absolutely.
we took for granted that in our minds it was sustainable, right? Just
Hmm.
do it. Well, it's not that easy. So it kind of fell flat a little bit as it dissipated.
Hmm.
To your question, if I were to have, 2, 3 guys come to me, that's our sign, right? Let's all get together. Like we're all going through it right now. We don't have to do these things in a silo. So I'll talk to the individual, and I have, right? I've met with a guy, for example, one on one. I'll go out to where he is. We'll sit down. We'll have lunch. we'll talk about what's going on because I guarantee you, Vish, if he's going through it,
Somebody else.
I'm also going through something, right? His thing may be more than mine in that moment, but I've had moments in my life that are darker or as dark. And so you tell me your story, I'll tell you mine,
Hmm.
right? We're in this together. That the peer champions is kind of an extension of what we've had in mind around that. I can't be the one to carry it, right? Because as soon as I'm out of town
That's it.
or
Yeah.
I'm somehow, unable to be reached due to whatever it is going on at the time, there's a hole in that plan, right?
Yeah.
So it's like any job. We pre-plan, we work the plan, and sometimes that plan changes, right? So we're getting smart about this, and we're beginning to put these things into action in a way that we're enrolling others to champion the cause. What I've got to be mindful of is how do we continue to nurture that?
Hmm.
And so, this is one of those things, right? A podcast. I understand it's not my entire team in here doing this, and I may be doing a piss poor job of it,
No, you're
even
not. You're
as an,
not. No, no, no.
but but I do this, and then maybe we share it with others, and some get value from it, others may not, right? But it's action. It's action forward. We're taking words and we're putting it into action. Now, when I'm done with this, I've said out loud to you, I need to do a better job of this lunch and learn, right? That reminds me, I need to be nurturing the peer champion program.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
reminds me that there are others within our industry here locally and in Wisconsin, another state, where we're officed and we have an operation, full force. I need to be there for them, right? And if I can't be there physically, how am I there for them in other ways? So tomorrow night I'll be with those folks in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a year-end party. I'm there to support them, right? It's their party, right?
yeah,
I'm there to hug them up, show them we love them, and that while I'm here and they're there, we're thinking about them. We're there, and I'm there on a monthly basis. But you understand my point.
yeah,
As leaders, from our ownership down, call it up throughout the ranks, our job is to step up, show up big, and if we don't feel up to it that day, the greatest thing we can do is own that and just say out loud to somebody, like, "Hey, I'm here, and I wanna show up big, but I gotta tell you, I'm going through it today. I feel low." And, there are times where I text somebody, one of our owners, right? We're all a team. We're all the same in this together, but I'll text him and I'll say to him, "I'm feeling low. I don't need anything from you. I just need to somehow say it out loud."
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And man, I feel better every time
Hmm.
because you've spoken it into the world, right?
Right.
So that's the industry. That's the industry changing thing we're trying to do. Just speak it out into the world.
Here's the thing, right? There's a lot of this sayings going out that men don't speak about their emotions, men don't know how to be vulnerable, etc., etc. But the more people I speak to and the more men I speak to, it feels as if we just don't have the space to actually be open and vulnerable. And what it sounds like you're doing is you're actually creating a safe space. I know that's a very, cliche way of saying it, but you're creating that safe space for these geezers to basically come up and go, I need to blow some steam and I need to get all that off my chest, which is absolutely incredible. And do you find that majority of the guys you speak to, if it's on your lunch, if it's on your lunchtime meeting or your peer support, do you find that these guys actually do open up and talk, or do you find they're still quite reserved? What are you kind of getting from it?
I think, yeah, I appreciate that. I think it goes both ways. I think a lot of guys are willing to open up. They're certainly capable of kind of owning that and leaning into that vulnerability. They, when given space, are I think wanting to do that. And we've seen just within our organization more and more guys and gals lean into that and really begin to just sort of demonstrate the fact that it's okay. There are guys too that, and women, right, who don't want to go there. That's sort of their space, and they don't want to go there. And what I think is interesting about that is even those individuals who choose not to go there, choose not to take you up on the offer to sort of enter into that space, they know what we're doing, right? They see in us what it is we're doing, and at a minimum, they respect it because it's not easy to do. And it's, in fact, easy not to do it, right? And it's not a me thing. I know I'm the one talking about it, but I believe as an organization, Gardner, we do a good job of putting out there in the open an open invitation for others to meet us where we are and wanting to be this to others, right?
Yeah.
I want to be to you not a means to an end, but really a cohort, right?
Mm,
Where you come to me not with the guarantee of an answer or a solution to whatever your problem might be, but an invitation to come to me with the opportunity to speak it out loud, right? So that it's being heard and acknowledged. Then I see you where you are in that moment. I meet you where you are in that moment because while I may not have the answer, I appreciate that you're somewhere short of perfect
mm,
in that moment because I'm going to find myself in that same spot, short of perfect at any given time. And if I see you, I know that in turn you can see me
yeah,
for who I am and where I am, right? And that's important. We all want to be seen. We all want to be heard, and sometimes that's it. We just want to
absolutely.
be seen and heard. So for the individuals who aren't willing to enter into this space, they're still being acknowledged. And my trust is they know that we're willing to see them and we're willing to hear them. They just need to come to us or allow us to meet them where they are.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And honestly, Brett, what a story you've shared today, from an accident to PTSD to suicide to having this beautiful family you now have and working in construction. It's wow. Is there anything else you feel like we've missed from your story that could be beneficial to our listeners, or anything you feel as if you want to share?
No, not really. I just I'm sitting here and I'm thinking that it's likely difficult to interpret from among what we've talked about that I'm a global safety director with a commercial builder, right? We've talked very little about construction. When I talk to you about Gardner, I'm not talking to you about the amazing work we put in place, the outstanding projects we've had opportunity to participate in. I'm talking to you about mental health. And I'd like for that to attest to the fact that as an organization, a commercial builder, we're focused on mental health in a way where it's by way of that avenue, equally by way of the avenue through which we put work in place, that we are destined to change the industry as we know it, right? To deconstruct it, to revolutionize it, so that when you hear Gardner, you think mental health first, construction second. And I think we're happy with that. I think that that's a sort of beautiful sort of contradiction that we've entered into and are more than happy to continue to propel in any way we can.
Incredible. Brett, one of the final questions that I ask all my guests, because we actually open up old wounds and it's not always easy to go back there. So, Brett, as honestly as you can, and I genuinely mean this, how are you today? Are you okay?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good in the sense that when I do get a chance to talk about my story, I never tell it the same way. I always feel that I'm tripping over myself and choosing words in a very poor kind of way, always able to articulate it somehow better. Yeah, I come out on this side of it proud, I think, of the fact that by some accounts I've lived a miserable life, right?
Not at all.
But for the grace of God, I am 26 years married, kids who are thriving, a career that has stood well to benefit from the grace and the professionalism and just the humanity of others. I feel proud and I feel honored being given the opportunity, and it just makes me realize how small I am. Right, the humility is such that I know it's been a life of happenstance, and I'm grateful for that.
Mm,
And I think it serves to offer others this sense of empowerment that it's often just taking one step and then another, right? And just getting halfway through it and one step more. And
uh,
sometimes it's nothing more than that.
Absolutely. I just want to say, you said that you've lived parts of it was miserable. I don't think it was. I think you've been on this bloody journey and it's made you the man you are today. And I just want to say thank you so much for being on this podcast, sharing so vulnerably, so openly your personal story. And as always, not looking to reach a million people. We're looking to reach that one person who needs to hear this and goes, I can get through the hard time I'm going through. So, Brett, thank you so much for being on the episode and on the podcast. And yeah, honestly, absolutely, yeah, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you, Vish. Likewise, it's an honor and a privilege. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Honestly, the more people we reach, the more support we can offer. And don't forget, Onward Shift isn't just a podcast. We've got a number of resources on our website, so please don't forget to check out www.onwardshift.com, where you'll find counselors, keynote speakers, coaches, blogs, and so much more. Until next time, don't forget to keep having these important conversations.